Chapter 15 is about cognitive development in adolescence. Let's start off by talking about Piaget's stages. So one major change is the ability to think beyond concrete current situations to what might or could be. Teens are able to keep up with a variety of abstract possibilities. So instead of viewing everything in black and white, they see in areas of gray. So according to Piaget, kids reach the formal operational stage in their teenage years. So he defines the stage in which people develop the ability to think abstractly. So around age 12 is when Piaget thinks teens or preteens enter into the formal operational stage. So these kids are able to test their understanding by systematically carrying out rudimentary experiments on problems and situations and observing what their experimental interventions bring about. They use hypothetical deductive reasoning, so they can start with a general theory about what produces a particular outcome, and they can deduce explanations for specific situations in which they see a particular outcome. So they can form a hypothesis, and then they can test different theories on it to see what is accurate and what is not accurate. Teens also use proportional thought during the formal operational stage. Teens can determine whether a statement is logically based solely on the wording of the statement, rather than have to observe or recreate the actual scenario to determine if it's really logical. So for an example, suppose Uncle Marty told his 14-year-old niece, Jamie, "I have one piece of money in my wallet for you. It's a $5 bill and it's a $20 bill." Jamie would automatically know that her uncle was joking around with her because she knows that the statement is illogical simply by the way it's worded. A single American money bill cannot represent two different types of money, a $5 bill and a $20 bill. However, suppose Uncle Marty were to say the same thing to a 7-year-old nephew, the nephew would not automatically understand the impossibility of the sentence. They would basically, the nephew wouldn't believe him having one piece of money, and then him saying it's a $5, it's a $20. The nephew would believe that it was just one piece. He would also need to see the money in his uncle's wallet to decide if he was trying to tease him or not. Moving on to the effects of formal operational stage, their increased abstract reasoning ability may lead teens to question their parents more. They may question authority more. Advances in abstract thinking lead to greater idealism, which makes teens impatient with imperfections, with institutions like school, with government. If you can think back to when you were in high school, you might have been impatient with your teachers. You might be impatient now with the government and what's going on with the government, or how school is operating even right now. You could be impatient. Teens may become more argumentative because of their newfound cognitive skills. So I remember my teenage years, I was very more argumentative with my parents. That is because of those new cognitive skills. If you can remember back in high school, or when you started being a teenager, were you more argumentative with your parents, with the school teachers, with authorities? Teenagers like to enjoy poking holes in other explanations, and their increased ability to think critically makes them acutely sensitive to parents and teachers' perceived shortcomings. So parents know what's best, or most parents know what's best for their teenagers. Teenagers, again, think they know what's best. Their new cognitive skills make them very sensitive about it. So they enjoy making fun of parents or that have the shortcomings. At the same time, teenagers can be indecisive. They are able to see the merits of multiple sides to issues, so they can be very indecisive with certain things. Coping with changes of teens can be challenging to parents and teachers. Makes teens more interesting as they actively seek to understand the values and justifications that they encounter in their lives. So their lives are changing and changing for the better, but it can be very difficult for teachers, for parents to see that. Moving on to the information processing theory. So teens' mental abilities to take in, use, and store information grows gradually and continuously. A number of progressive changes occur in the way people organize their thinking about the world, develop strategies for dealing with new situations or facts, and achieve advances in memory capacities and perceptual abilities. So teens' general intelligence remains stable, but there is a dramatic improvement in specific mental abilities that underlie intelligence. So verbal, math, and spatial abilities increase. So that makes teens more quicker with the comebacks. They have more impressive source of info, so they can get information more accurately or can see two different sides of things. And accomplished athletes also is in the general intelligence and that spatial ability. Teens grow increasingly sophisticated in their understanding of problems, their ability to grasp abstract concepts, and to think hypothetically, and their comprehension of the possibilities inherent in situations. Teens also know more about the world than they ever have before. Their store of knowledge increases as the amount of material to which they are exposed to grows. One important reason for the advances in mental abilities is the growth of metacognition. Metacognition is the knowledge that people have their own thinking processes and their ability to monitor their cognition. Teens improve their understanding of their memory capacity. They get better at gauging how long they need to study for a test. Egocentrism. So we talked about childhood egocentrism that usually tends to go away. When we reach adolescence, it kind of comes back. It's called adolescent egocentrism. So this is a state of self-absorption in which the world is viewed as focused on oneself. And every teenager has this, or most teenagers has this egocentrism. It can dominate their way of thinking. It makes them highly critical of authority figures, unwilling to accept criticism, and quick to find a fault with others' behaviors. I have some teen cousins that they're just very into themselves. That's all they really think about. Anytime you talk to them, that's what they talk about. They talk about themselves. So that's the egocentrism. It's all focused on that person, on that oneself. And teens also can develop something that is called an imaginary audience. So this is when a fictitious observer who pays as much attention to the teen's behavior as the teens do themselves. So an example of this, a teen that is infected by an imaginary audience might be self-conscious and may worry about what other people think about them. So maybe they have acne or a pimple on their face. Well, everybody's going to be looking at that pimple on their face. Probably no one ever notices it, but the teenager that has acne on the face, they have that imaginary audience where everyone is going to be looking at that pimple or that all their acne on their face. They may change their clothes constantly before leaving the house to make sure that they are presentable for everyone that is watching them. Most people don't care what another person wears, but the imaginary audience, everyone's going to be looking at their clothes. That's what teenagers believe. everyone's going to be looking at them. Teenagers also develop personal fables as well. A personal fable is the view that what happens to them is unique, exceptional, and shared by nobody else. So, for an example, a teen who has a romantic relationship, they have the relationship and they break up. That teen may feel like nobody else in the world except them has ever been through a romantic breakup. No one else has experienced the hurt that they feel. No one else has experienced about how they've been treated so badly. No one can understand what they are going through. So that is a personal fable. These fables that teenagers have make teens constructive invincibility fables. So this is when they feel invincible to the world. For example, thinking they don't need a condom when they have sex because it won't happen to them. That girl is not going to get pregnant because it won't happen. Or they won't get the STD because it's not going to happen to them. Or they drive drunk because they think they won't get into a car wreck. It's not going to happen for them. They feel invincible to the world. Adolescent egocentrism also may lead to feelings of stupidity when an adolescent misses an answer that is to an obvious, simple question because he or she adds unnecessary complexity in thinking about the answer. So this is called pseudo-stupidity. It occurs not because teens are stupid, but because their lack experience with the newly attained ability to think about multiple possibilities at the same time. Moving on to moral development, I haven't written anything out for this. I want to watch a video about moral development. So this is on Kohlberg's theory of moral development. Let's watch it together.
Lawrence Kohlberg's theory claims that our development of moral reasoning happens in 6 stages. The stages themselves are structured in 3 levels: pre-conventional, conventional, and post-conventional. To understand this better, imagine a conflict at school. There is a fight in the schoolyard. 2 ninth graders are beating up Tom. Those who watch the fight are at different stages of moral development. Let's see what they do and how they justify their behavior. At stage 1, we make moral judgments based on obedience and punishment. Finn's sense of good or bad is directly linked to whether he gets punished or not. Finn sees what is happening to his friend and wants to help, but he doesn't because he is afraid the teacher may punish him if he gets caught fighting. He asks himself, how can I avoid punishment? At stage 2, we are motivated by self-interest. Mary decides to intervene and help Tom. She knows that she might get punished, but she also knows that she could become a victim herself someday. If she helps Tom now, he might help her in the future. She is asking herself, what's in it for me? At stage 3, interpersonal accord and conformity guide our moral judgment. Betty sees the fight and wants to intervene, but when she realizes that all the others are just watching, she decides not to get involved. She wants others to see that she is a good girl who is conforming with the ethics of the community. She asks herself, what do others think of me? At stage 4, we value authority and want to maintain social order. When the teacher sees the group fighting, he immediately steps in and shouts, "Stop! Fighting at school is forbidden." He feels that, above all, it is important to follow the rules, otherwise chaos breaks out. He feels it is his duty to uphold the rules that sustain a functioning society. He asks himself, how can I maintain law and order? At stage 5, we understand rules as a social contract, as opposed to a strict order. Jessie, who watches from afar, is not sure how she feels about this. To her, rules make sense only if they serve the right purpose. Obviously, the school rules prohibit fighting, but maybe Tom deserves to finally learn his lesson. Just yesterday, he punched a young girl from grade 1. She asks herself, does a rule truly serve all members of the community? At stage 6, we are guided by universal ethical principles. All those involved now have to face the headmaster. He first explains the school rules and why they exist. He then clarifies that rules are valid only if they are grounded in justice. The commitment to justice carries with it an obligation to disobey unjust rules. The headmaster's highest moral principle is compassion. He believes that all people should learn to understand each other's viewpoints and that they don't feel alone with their feelings. He asks, what are the abstract ethical principles that serve my understandings of justice? At the pre-conventional level, Finn is driven by fear and Mary by self-interest. Both judge what is right or wrong by the direct consequences they expect for themselves and not by social norms. This form of reasoning is common among children. At the conventional level, Betty responds to peer pressure, and the teacher follows the rules. Their morality is centered around what society regards as right. At this level, the fairness of rules is seldom questioned. It is common to think like this during adolescence and adulthood. At the post-conventional level, Jessie knows that things are complicated because individuals may disobey rules inconsistent with their own morality. The headmaster follows a universal ethical idea, at complete disconnect with what society thinks or the rules say. To him, everything is solved through compassion. The right behavior, in his opinion, is therefore never a means to an end, but always an end in itself. Not every person reaches this level. The American psychologist Lawrence Kohlberg based his work on Piaget's theory of cognitive development. In order to confirm his theory of stages of moral development, Kohlberg interviewed boys between the ages of 10 and 16. He analyzed how they would justify their decision when confronted with different hypothetical moral dilemmas. We will now present to you the most famous moral dilemma Kohlberg presented to his students. Let's see what you would do. The Heinz Dilemma. A woman was on her deathbed. There was only one drug that the doctors thought might save her. The druggist that made that particular medicine sold it for 10 times the price of the production costs. The sick woman's husband, Heinz, was poor and could not afford to buy the drug, not even with the financial help of his friends. Heinz then asked the pharmacist to sell it to him for half the price, but he refused. To save the life of his wife, Heinz broke into the man's laboratory and stole the medicine. Now tell us, should Heinz have stolen the drug? Would it change anything if Heinz didn't love his wife? What if the person dying was not his wife, but a stranger? Should the police arrest the druggist for murder if the wife had died? Please write your answers and their justifications in the comments below.
Again, I don't have anything on Gilligan's moral theory, but I have a video that explains it very well, and so I want to watch that together. If you have any questions over any of these type of moral developments, please let me know, and we can discuss it.
A community of moles gives shelter to a homeless porcupine. The moles, however, are constantly stabbed by the porcupine's quills. What should they do? This scenario was used to aid in the development of a theory that argued women and men may have differing paths to moral development. This lesson will introduce and apply that theory, developed by Carol Gilligan. The field of moral development encompasses prosocial behavior such as altruism, caring, and helping, along with traits such as honesty, fairness, and respect. Many theories of moral development have been proposed, but this lesson will focus on the specific theory proposed by psychologist Carol Gilligan. Gilligan was a student of developmental psychologist Lawrence Kohlberg, who introduced the theory of stages of moral development. Gilligan, however, felt as though her mentor's theory did not adequately address the gender differences of moral development due to the fact that participants in Kohlberg's study were predominantly male and because his theory did not include the caring perspective. Gilligan argued that males and females are often socialized differently, and females are more apt than males to stress interpersonal relationships and take responsibility for the well-being of others. Gilligan suggested this difference is due to the child's relationship with the mother, and that females are traditionally taught a moral perspective that focuses on community and caring about personal relationships. Gilligan proposed the stages of the ethics of care theory, which addresses what makes actions right or wrong. Gilligan's theory focused on both care-based morality and justice-based morality. Care-based morality is based on the following principles. It emphasizes interconnectedness and universality. Acting justly means avoiding violence and helping those in need. Care-based morality is thought to be more common in girls because of their connections to their mothers. Because girls remain connected to their mothers, they are less inclined to worry about issues of fairness. Justice-based morality is based on the following principles. It views the world as being composed of autonomous individuals who interact with another. Acting justly means avoiding inequality. Is thought to be more common in boys because of their need to differentiate themselves and their mothers. Because they are separated from their mothers, boys become more concerned with the concept of inequality. Returning to our mole-porcupine scenario, researchers found individuals approach the problem with two perspectives, justice-based morality or care-based morality. Gender differences were also evident. Individuals with a justice-based perspective tend to see any dilemma as a conflict between different claims. The moles want one thing, the porcupine wants something incompatible. They can't both have a valid claim on the burrow, so only one of them can be right. A solution to the dilemma is not a resolution of the conflict. It's a verdict, in which one side gets everything and the other side gets nothing. The care-based perspective approaches the problem differently. Rather than seeing all the parties as separate individuals with their own valid or invalid claims, it sees them as already in a difficult situation together. If there is a conflict between them, that is part of the problem. The point is not to decide the conflict one way or another, but to find a way to get around it or remove it. This perspective starts from the particular case and the actual people within it, and hopes to find a solution that will not damage anyone. It will be ready to embrace compromise and creative solutions. Researchers have found a tendency for males to adopt the justice perspective and for females to be more likely than males to adopt the caring perspective. Like Kohlberg, Gilligan proposed 3 stages in her ethics of care theory: pre-conventional, conventional, and post-conventional. Within each stage, there are goals and specific transition points that move the individual through the stages. Gilligan suggests that these transitions are fueled by changes in the sense of self rather than in changes in cognitive capability. During the pre-conventional stage, the individual learns to care for oneself. The goal is individual survival. The transition is from selfishness to responsibility toward others. In the conventional stage, the individual internalizes norms about caring for others and tends to neglect oneself. The goal is self-sacrifice. The transition is from self-sacrifice to the truth that the individual is a person and should be cared for too. The final stage, post-conventional, is the point in which an individual becomes critical of the conventions they adopted in the conventional stage and learns to balance caring for self with caring for others. The goal is a principle of nonviolence. Do not hurt others or self. Moving away from our mole-porcupine example, let's explain these stages through another scenario. 2 friends, Amy and Ella, are playing at recess when a bully approaches Ella to start a fight. In the pre-conventional stage, Amy might run away, leaving Ella behind, because she is concerned with her safety and worries about getting in trouble for fighting at school. In the conventional stage, Amy might start fighting the bully herself to protect her friend, neglecting her own safety for her friend's safety. In the post-conventional stage, Amy might try to intervene and stop any fighting from occurring. The study of moral development involves both pro-social behaviors, such as caring and helping, and traits such as honesty, fairness, and respect. Many theories exist to explain moral development among children, but Gilligan introduced a theory that captured the gender differences of moral development. Gilligan's theory focused on both care-based morality and justice-based morality by proposing 3 stages of moral development: pre-conventional, conventional, and post-conventional. In each stage, the individual transitions from one focus to another, eventually establishing a balance between caring for oneself and for others.
Moving on to schooling. So moving from elementary school to middle school is a normative transition. It's part of most everyone's life in the U.S. So the transition can be very difficult because of the physical, the intellectual, and the social changes that are occurring around the same time. Most middle schools are classified from 6th to 8th grade. Many teens are beginning puberty at this time, and they're coming to grips with what's taking place, all the changes that are taking place in their bodies. And again, the transition from elementary to junior high or middle school can be very difficult because, and we'll talk about this, but in elementary, especially that last year, you're the ones in charge. You're the highest grade level, and then going in the 6th grade, you're the lowest grade level at the middle school. So it can be very difficult because of that. And at this time, middle school students, again, their thinking is becoming more sophisticated with time. Their relationships with family and friends are becoming more complicated than ever before. Middle school provides a different educational structure as well. So in elementary school, usually you have one teacher. Moving to middle school, every teacher is different for the most part. Students move from class to class, so you're going to have different kids in every class. You may not have your best friend in every class. So you have different students, you have different teachers for every class. So middle schoolers have to adapt to the demands of different teachers. They have to adapt to having new classmates every period. Students entering middle schools may find themselves at the bottom of the status hierarchy due to them being the oldest at elementary school. Students can find middle school more alarming and sometimes even more damaging. Middle schools are usually larger than elementary schools, and it can make the transition with school more difficult. So here's some stats about U.S. middle schools. 15-year-olds in U.S. ranked 38th out of 71 countries in math and 24th in science. 29% of 8th graders score below basic in math, the lowest performance level on the National Assessment of Educational Progress. Only 34% perform at or above the proficient level on the widely used National Assessment of Educational Progress in reading. Almost 20% of high school students don't graduate, and of those that don't, a significant number are not ready for the rigors of college. It's kind of scary sounding, right? Do you have any thoughts on that? Any questions over that? That's one reason I showed you the Waiting for Superman video. I do hope you watched it because I think it's a very good video about our education. Our education could be so much better, but it's not, and it will continue to be that way unless government does something about it. I don't know. I would love to see the standardized test go away. I think that would help a little bit in their the way teachers teach. The STAR test is what teachers teach to. That is what they have to teach to. I think definitely If that went away, then teachers could kind of teach how they wanted to. I think it would be a whole lot different for education. But yeah, I think it's very scary that out of 71 countries, we rank in like 38th, and that's kind of sad. That's according to 15-year-olds, but that's still very sad for a 15-year-old. Again, if you have any thoughts, any questions on schooling, just let me know. Moving on to social economic status, school performance. All students are entitled to have the same opportunity in the classroom, but it is clear that certain groups have more educational advantages than others. Again, we saw this in the Waiting for Superman video. The most telling indicator of this reality is the relationship between educational achievement and social economic status. So middle and high social economic status students on average earn higher grades, score higher on standardized tests of achievement, and complete more years of schooling than students from a lower SES home. So this doesn't apply just to adolescent years, but it also applies to elementary years. But by the time students reach high school, the SES is more pronounced. Students with middle or higher SES show greater academic success due to several reasons. Again, they have more advantages in life from a kid living in poverty. A student living in poverty may lack adequate nutrition. So having a great nutrition is going to help you succeed in school. A student in poverty may live in an overcrowded home. They may not attend the very best school. Their school may be inadequate, where they don't have enough computers for everybody, where they may not have enough books for everybody to have. Again, students living in poverty may have fewer places to do homework because of their house being overcrowded. They may not find alone time to get to do their homework or the space to do their homework. And again, their homes may not have computers. Their homes may not have any books around for them to read. Moving on to ethnic and racial differences in school achievement. On average, African Americans and Hispanic students tend to perform at lower levels, receive lower grades, and score lower on standardized tests of achievements than Caucasian students. Asian American students tend to receive higher grades than Caucasian students. So why is this? Much of the difference is due to social economic factors. A higher proportion of African Americans and Hispanic families live in poverty. So, according to anthropologist John Ogbu, member of certain minority groups may perceive school success as relatively unimportant. They may believe that societal prejudice in the workplace will dictate that they will not succeed, no matter how much effort they put into it. Hard work in school will have no eventual payoff, is really what they believe in. Dropping out of school. Most students complete high school, but each year some 500,000 students drop out prior to graduating. The consequences of dropping out are pretty severe. High school dropouts earn 42% less than high school graduates do, and the unemployment rate for high school dropouts is more than twice of that of college graduates. So why do teens drop out of school? Some leave because they get pregnant or they have problems with the English language. Some leave due to economic reasons, like needing to support their own family or needing to support themselves. Boys are more likely to drop out than girls are. Hispanic and African American students are more likely to leave high school before graduating than non-Hispanic white students. Not all minority groups show higher dropout rates, though. Asian Americans drop out at a lower rate than whites do. Poverty plays a large role in determining whether a student completes high school. Students from a lower income household are 3 times more likely than those from middle or upper income households to drop out. So dropping out often perpetuates the cycle of poverty. And again, that cycle of poverty is very hard to get out of. Once you're in poverty, you may stay in that cycle until you can find a job. But again, sometimes if you grew up with it, that's the only way you know, and so you may just stick with it for the rest of your life in that cycle. Part-time work. So in 2011, 28% of high school students had some kind of part-time job, and 1% held a full-time job while attending school. The numbers have declined since 2000 because the weaker U.S. economy has caused employers who traditionally hire high school students, like fast food, convenience stores, retail stores, movie theaters, to fill their jobs with desperate adults instead. So the economy has, again, been weaker, and so that is why there's been a decline in the high school employment rate. So working does have advantages and disadvantages. So the advantages of working, it provides funds for the teenager. It helps them learn about responsibilities, gives them practice with handling money, and it can help them teach about the workplace skills. Teenagers can develop good work habits that may help them perform better academically. Participation in jobs or internships can help students understand the nature of work in different employment settings. But there are drawbacks. So many jobs available for high school students are on the boring or dull scale, low on the transferable scales, meaning that their skills can't be passed from one job to the next job. And also, employment may prevent students from participating in extracurricular activities. The most troubling consequence is that school performance is negatively related to the number of hours a student works. Generally, the more hours on a job, the lower the student's grades. Students may not have enough time to work on that schoolwork because they're so invested in their job work. College. I'm not going to go into full detail about this section, but I do want to show you a video about diversity. Diversity is a great thing for all education, even starting from elementary on up to college. Diversity is great. I grew up in Granbury. When I went to school, all the diversity we had a couple of Hispanic families. That was really it. My husband, on the other hand, grew up in Garland, and his school was very diverse, and I think it's great for education. And then I went to Weatherford College, which was pretty diverse. Tarleton's not as diverse as some other campuses. I went to University of North Texas. That was very diverse. So yeah, I think diversity is a great thing for education, and I think it's a great thing for people to know about diversity. So let's watch a video on diversity.
Just coming from a diverse background, I think I hold a set of experiences that are unique, that are very much part of a larger narrative of people of color in America.
As a queer woman of color, I've never learned about anyone like me, and that from that kind of stemmed this confusion and feeling like I was really different.
For me, I grew up in the Caribbean. Being an Asian adopted kid in a black family growing up, people started to question my behavior. They were like, "You don't act like an Asian kid." And I started to ask myself, what does that even mean?
Having a diverse group of peers around you is really important too, because you get the opportunity to talk about your identity and talk about the things that matter to you and your personal experiences, and get to share them with people who may have different, experiences than you do.
I think just learning from people about their customs and their religions and their ideas helps you kind of learn about yourself and learn about what's important to you and what's not important to you.
Getting exposed to ideas that you're not usually exposed to helps you develop more of a compassion just towards your fellow humans. You can start interacting like humans again.
I've learned more from the people I've met from the various backgrounds and cultures that they've grown up in, more so than just the regular stuff that comes out of your textbook.
You learn probably just as much from your peers and from the people that you're surrounded by that you do from your professors within the class.
Like, I bring a lot of perspectives to the table. Like, I'm Afghan, I'm queer, I'm a woman. I've learned a lot about interesting women in history, like women of color, queer people, figures that have actually paved the way in a lot of ways that you wouldn't have learned at more conservative schools.
I wouldn't have such a holistic understanding if I didn't have people around me who do come from a different set of backgrounds or unique sets of backgrounds.
It needs to happen. It's incredibly, incredibly important.
If we don't try to learn or we're not integrated into a diverse environment, into a diverse education, then we probably won't be able to survive, as much in this world or in any society.
Choosing an occupation. So some kids know from childhood that they want to be a certain profession and they follow that path all the way through college. But for others, the choice of career is very much a matter of chance, of searching through a career and seeing what's available. Researcher has proposed a variety of approaches to understanding how teenagers choose an initial career to pursue. So we'll focus on two different approaches on choosing an occupation. So the first approach that we're going to be talking about is Ginsberg's 3 periods. So according to Eli Ginsberg, people generally move through several stages in choosing a career. So the first one is called the fantasy period, which lasts until age 11. Career choices are made and discarded without any regards to skills, abilities, or available job opportunities. Choices are made solely on the basis of what sounds appealing. So a child may decide to be a vet, even though they're allergic to dogs and cats. We all had those fantasy moments. My son wants to be an astronaut. We'll see if he ever gets there. But right now it's fantasy. He loves outer space. He wants to be an astronaut. But again, that's the fantasy. It sounds fun for him to go into space. The next period is tentative period. People begin to take a practical consideration into account during this period. So this period spans adolescence. So it's from 11 until really the end of the adolescent years. So during the tentative period, people begin to think in pragmatic terms about the requirements of various jobs, and how their own abilities might fit with those requirements. They also consider their personal values and their goals. They explore how well a particular occupation might satisfy them. In my tentative period, especially in high school, I wanted to be a high school counselor. I loved my high school counselor. I thought she was awesome. I thought it would be kind of cool to show people what kind of classes they would want to take or whatever, help them through their high school career. And then I started looking into being a high school counselor, and you have to teach for so many years. And I thought, I don't want to teach at all. And so I quickly moved away from that when I got to college. So in your early adulthood, in your realistic period is what it's called. That's your third stage. These teenagers, these early adults, They explore specific career options either through actual experience on the job or through training for a profession or taking college classes. So if you take college classes, you might get a feel of what that career or occupation leads to. And so that's what I did. When I started college, I took a few classes here and there just to get a feel of what it might look like in the career. And that's kind of how I decided to go into psychology. I had a great psychology teacher, but really I had I think he was a social work teacher, and I had thought I'd go into social work at one point in time, and so he was the coolest teacher, and I really thought then I want to be a college teacher. I want to teach college, and so after I thought I would do that, I really liked psychology, and I thought I'll just follow the psychology path and hopefully get to teach one day. So I am living my dream occupation, my dream career by teaching y'all. I love psychology, and I think it's very interesting. So going back to the realistic period, they begin to narrow their choices to a few alternative careers, and eventually they make a commitment to a particular one. So like I said, I went to Weatherford College. I took a social work class. And I thought I want to do social work. And I went into this introduction of social work, took it, was like, don't really care for it. Then I took another class, and then I took another one. I finally ended up, again, choosing pretty quick as to what I wanted to do, what I wanted to major in college. Moving on to Holland's 6 personality types, John Holland said that certain personality types match particularly well with certain careers. And I'm sure in high school or even in middle school, you might have taken some kind of personality test to tell you what you are and what you should be in your occupation, in your life. And I remember taking these. I took one, I guess, one time, either in middle or high school, and I always ended up with social. That was mine, and I thought I don't want to be a teacher. That was my thinking back then. I don't really want to be a teacher, but I always came up with the social. That was my personality type. But so let's go on and let's talk about the personality types. Number 1 is realistic. So these people are down to earth. They're practical problem solvers who are physically strong, but their social skills are mediocre. So they make good farmers, good laborers, good truck drivers. Then there's intellectual personality type. So these people are oriented toward theoretical and the abstract. They're not particularly good with people, but they are well suited for careers in math and science. Then you have social. These people have very good verbal skills, very good interpersonal skills. They're good with working with people, so they make good salesmen, good teachers, good counselors. And by the way, I would never make a good salesman. I don't have that kind of the pitch in me to make a good salesman. Number 4 is conventional. So these people are very highly structured. And when they do tasks, they're very highly structured. So these people make good clerks, good secretaries, good bank tellers. Then we have enterprising. So these are risk takers. They take charge. They're really good leaders. So they're good. They're going to be good at being a politician. They may be good at being a manager in the workplace. And then we have artistic. So they use art to express themselves. So they're best suited to occupations involving art. But not everyone fits neatly into one category. So you could be one or the other, or you could be a little bit of both, or all of them. And so not everyone fits neatly into one category. If you have any thoughts, any questions on these personality types or career types, how we choose our career, let me know, and we can discuss it. Women's work. So in your book, there's an exaggerated job description of being a housewife, and I think it's very interesting of a description of being a housewife. It says, help wanted. Family firm seeks full-time worker for financial management, bookkeeping, childcare, cooking, cleaning, laundering, mending, gardening, shopping. Hours: typical work week 60 hours with possibility of extra duty up to 24 hours per day, 7 days a week. Salary and benefits: no cash remuneration, but generous benefits include meals, clothing, and shelter, plus small personal shopping allowance, vacation and retirement at will of employer, job security at will of employer, no opportunity for promotion. Qualifications: previous experience not necessary, driver's license and healthcare experience a plus, only women need apply. So only 3 or 4 decades ago, many women were housewives. Even women who sought work outside of the home were regulated to certain professions. So in the 60s, many employment ads in the U.S. were almost always divided up into 2 sections. So there was a help wanted for a male section, and there was a help wanted for female sections. We've come a long way. Now they're not even supposed to discriminate between male and female, so we've definitely come a long way. Traditionally, women were considered for communal professions, so these occupations were associated with relationships. Men were considered for agentic professions. These occupations were associated with things getting accomplished. So, again, communal professions, of course, were lower status, and they were lower on the pay grade than agentic occupations. Now it is illegal to advertise for either a man or a woman. Like I said, there should be no discrimination. There is going to always be that discrimination, I'm sure. There are going to be prejudices, but there should not be during that interview process. But again, there are going to be some discriminations that we may never know about. Sometimes you hear people or women that are pregnant that don't get hired because they are pregnant, because they're going to have a baby and they're going to take off so many weeks after they give birth. I was pregnant when I got my first teaching job at Hill College. I had worked part-time at Hill College, was pregnant when they hired me for full-time. I started in August teaching, and I had my baby in October, so I didn't have much time before I had the baby. I only got 3 weeks off. That was the deal before I even started. But it worked out. It was what I wanted to do. It was my first time of getting a full-time teaching job, so I definitely took it. The baby was well taken care of. It was hard to get away from the baby. He was only 3 weeks old, but that's how it was. There was no prejudice. There was no discrimination when I got that job. And I was very well pregnant when I got that job. So that's just an example of the prejudices, the discrimination that might go into a workplace. Even now, again, there are still prejudices. Women tend to make 80 cents less for every dollar a man makes. Women who are in minority groups tend to even make less than that. There's always been a pay gap between sexes, and really they expect the pay gap to totally disappear in 2059, but that's a long time from now, so who knows what will happen by that time. There may still be a pay gap in 2059. We'll just have to see and find out at that point in time. More women are working outside of the home than ever before. Women make up half the labor force. In households in which both partners work, 29% of women make more than their husbands. So there are way more opportunities for women now. Women are more likely to be physicians, lawyers, insurance agents, bus drivers. Way back when, that was a man's job. A man's job was to be a doctor or a physician, to be a lawyer, to be an insurance agent. Now you see a lot of women doing that too. But again, there's still a huge gap in pay. Even if the man and woman have the same degree, same experience, same skills, same everything, a man tends to make more. If you have any thoughts, any questions on that, let me know. I don't think it's fair, but it's hard to do anything about it because that's the way it's always been. It is getting better, and hopefully by 2059 it will totally disappear, but who knows what will happen by that time. If you have any thoughts, any questions, just let me know. That is the end of chapter 15.